It is the most recognized and visited memorial all in D.C. Now, in 1982, at the dedication of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, we had a national salute to the Vietnam veterans. A young man, veteran combat for the 1st Cav, John Devitt, traveled from California to visit this wall. And he hoped to really make a contact with some of the guys that he had served with. As he crossed the grassy knoll, which you could do in those days, he saw the memorial and was completely taken back. He didn't believe how emotional he had become. At that moment, he knew what his life would be. He left the memorial before the ceremony started. He drove back to California, gave up his apartment, sold everything he had, and lived in his car. With the help of 2 friends, Norris Shears and Gary Haber, they privately raised $2,500 to make the first mobile replica. 26 years ago, John put his wall up in Tyler, Texas, at the Rose Festival. And upon getting the memorial upright, immediately people started visiting. And one woman particularly caught his eye. She stood in front of the memorial and knelt down. He thought she was praying, but actually she was crying. He didn't know whether it was for a father, a son, a husband, or a brother. But he knew at that moment this half-size replica would evoke the same emotion that he felt in D.C. At that moment, he also knew that for the rest of his life, he would drive this replica around the country. Now, after seeing the memorial in 1985, a young woman named Nikki Fassard came up to John and said, "This is an incredible moving replica," and it moved. Why don't you call it the moving wall? Well, John bristled at that, but actually that is what it's been called for the last 26 years. Now, the moving wall has been to all 50 states, except for D.C., for obvious reasons. But we have also been to Guam, Canada, Puerto Rico, and the Mariana Islands. When we go into a city, and we have to be invited, we just don't show up. We set up for 5 days. We come in on a Thursday. It takes about 4 hours to put the memorial up, and we leave on a Monday, and it takes about 2 hours to disassemble. Now, this memorial is the only original nonprofit, non-political memorial. It does not ever set up in any activity that is for fundraising, reunions, or carnival-type events. John will allow no vendors at the memorial. He wants the dignity and the respect for his veterans to remain as it does in D.C. Now, the memorial allows only 2 ceremonies to take place at front of the moving wall. That is the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony. Now, some people have come up to me and said, "Oh, I've been to the real wall." Well, trust me, this is the real wall. Now, there are some similarities and some differences. The first being, it's not the same size. It is half size. And the first criteria of having it reflective in the topography was the reason why it was done in black marble, because it acts as a mirror. The second criteria was to have inclusive all of the Vietnam veterans, hence the size 494 feet. The letters are engraved, they're recessed, and they're 1.5 inches in height. To make a rubbing of a name, you need a black graphite pencil. Now, the moving wall wanted to have the same, so they used black aluminum, again being reflective. But we are only 252 feet in length. Our letters are 1/2 inch in height, and they are silk screen embossed. Whereas what we call the stationary wall, there are dots within the margin. There are every 10 lines. but because our letters are much smaller, our ducts go every 20 lines. And to perform rubbing, you need a carpenter's crayon. Pencils and pens destroy the memorial. Now in DC, the stationary wall is 140 panels. We have 148. If you go to DC and you stand looking at the apex, the center, you will see that you actually go down into the ground. And as you come up to each vanishing end, you are walking upward. The top of the memorial is actually equal to Constitution Avenue. And as a footnote, Maya Yinglin's name is engraved on the top at the apex, curbside. Now we added the extra 8 panels, 4 on either side, because we had to create the illusion that you were looking into the memorial going down. Now on either end, the panel is only 18 inches in height. So 70 east and 70 west had only one line.